So we begin, and I have to tell you,
רק רגע, אתה רוצה שאני אפסיק את המוזיקה?
כן, זה גם יכול להיות טוב. So I say, I'm very, very happy with how writing this book is going.
I'm glad.
I know for you, it's all the same. For me, it's a very interesting exercise in drawing out, sketching out various topographies in the psyche in the ways that aren't often discussed. And I think what has happened a lot in my private conversations with you, and what I've tried to put a magnifying glass in our conversations is developing a lexicon for understanding oneself and one's own kind of psyche, and optimizing one's mind, especially when one's a little bit crazy.
We all are.
We all are. But
that's what Freud said.
That's what who?
Freud.
Yes. And there was a crazy bastard if there ever lived one. Yeah, we made the distinction between two kinds of crazy, right? I'm crazy, everyone says it, and I'm crazy because I know what's in the COVID vaccine.
You call me crazy because they don't want to admit that I'm the king of the world.
Yes, yes. I wonder if it's a fair parsing to say there's logical insanity and illogical insanity.
One can say that, yes.
Freud
said that neuroses are illogical. He said when you meet a logical person who at a certain part of his mental topology is not logical, then he is neurotic.
Okay, if you find a lack of logic in an otherwise logical person, that is a neurotic individual.
That's what said Freud.
Which of course describes nearly everybody.
Absolutely, and he was not unaware of it. He said we all are.
And that's an interesting point to me, because another thing is thinking about that comes up is thoughts and emotions, and how it's a difficult thing not to let your emotions interrupt your thoughts, your logical thinking. It's quite a
that's self-analysis.
I don't know if you have any tips on that, on how to how to learn.
Oh, I have one tip.
Yeah.
If you think you're perfect, you're sick.
Okay. Yes, that's a good start. Which is funny because there's so many, there's such a big force in the world today to talk positively of oneself, as opposed to, you know, the Western education that teaches us to be ashamed of our sexuality and think we are unfit and all that. So everybody is just focusing on saying on Facebook or wherever how blessed they are, but then that causes the same problem, doesn't it?
Yes, only there is a theory that more primitive societies operate on shame and more developed ones on guilt. And David Dauber, who was a great thinker, showed that in the book of Exodus, there is a mixture of the two philosophies. It's a transition.
So what about, where would you place, I don't know how to call it, in psychology, in assessment psychology, we have a term called faking good, which is when the individual in question is presenting themselves in an uncharacteristically favorable light.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that I feel like that's a core poison of humanity. I don't know if I would put it with shame. I feel like it's shame, but I don't know for sure.
You see, all our education rests on the assertion that there is a permanent conflict between individual and society, and individual must give in, and on the idea that the way society does it is either by shame or by guilt. The idea is that you cannot control people with power alone. This is what Machiavelli said, what many people agree is a standard fact. That is to say, all government, with almost no exception, rests on some participation, some cooperation, some willingness to accept the authority, however reluctantly and however marginally.
Yeah.
I don't know how true this is. This is a different question, but this is a very popular theory. And the idea is that you cooperate with the government either through shame or through guilt. The inquisitor always says, so you think you are perfect, huh?
I heard a wonderful joke, you probably know it, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it's, let's say it's Yom Kippur in the synagogue, and in the middle of the services, the rabbi breaks down and he says, who am I? I am nothing. And later the cantor breaks down and says, who am I? Am I nothing? And then the doorman, or who is supposed to present them with something, he says, I am nothing. And the rabbi goes, look who thinks he's nothing.
Yes, that's a famous, he thinks he has arrived is the expression.
He think what?
He thinks he has arrived.
Arrived, okay. Arrived at what? At the enlightenment? At the
status.
At the status, yes. That's a funny thing how the value can change with the words being opposite. It's hard to make sense of the human mind and how to not be an idiot.
This is how metaphors work. You have a small corner of the house that you want to conceal, so you call it by one name and it becomes bad, so you change it to another name. You know, comfort room, toilet, and every name becomes sooner or later stinking enough, you have to change it again.
That's fantastic. That's exactly it. That reminds me of the N word, like the actual,
yes.
N word.
Yes.
Yeah.
I once used the word nigger in public, and although it was very clear that it was in quotes, I was censured for it. What's
really interesting to me about it is that there's a quote, speaking of a quote, one of the greatest quotes ever by Muhammad Ali about Vietnam. He said, Viet Cong never called me a nigger. And I feel okay to say that word in that quote because it's a really meaningful quote about the emancipation of an enslaved nation.
Indeed.
And yet it's now white people or whoever can't say it, can't like discuss forward thinking that requires that word.
When I came to America in my first lecture, I discussed this and told my students, you call me kike and I call you gringo and we get along well. And it wasn't that well received.
No, I called somebody a kike the other day and they didn't receive it well either. No sense of humor.
It's pathetic.
Another thing, just something I wanted to throw that we talked about before, and I thought about was when thinking about understanding yourself and controlling yourself, you once told me about like be aware of your own gearbox.
Yes.
Which basically means, you know, when you're in the morning, you wake up in first gear. It takes you a while when you're doing a lot of work maybe you're in fourth or fifth gear, but you should always be aware, are you in the right gear for how fast your engine is running?
That's right. The Gearbox came to public notice with a movement for speed reading.
Yeah.
That's what they taught you, that anyway, you read with different speeds, different texts.
Yeah, so they taught you to be able to increase your
Be aware of it and to control it, yes.
Okay. I said how to look at your emotions without taking them seriously. And you said first to make sure that you know that you're not perfect.
Yes.
I wonder, what I thought about for myself is like, it's interesting. Sometimes we we need to teach our emotions not to interrupt our thoughts, but sometimes it's the other way around.
Indeed. You're quite right. It goes both ways.
And I was
But the main point to realize is the greatest weakness we all have is defensiveness. Excuse me.
no problem.
Agassi. אני מתנצל.
אין בעיה, אין בעיה.
תודה.
So,
מעניין
כן.
שהוא דיבר בדיוק על מה שאנחנו דיברנו.
בדיוק, כן. That was, I switch now. You just got a phone call about the same thing we're talking about.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm at your service.
No, I was saying it was, it's interesting. This is part of your magic. People call you to, things converge around you sometimes.
I suppose I have a very limited menu, and so people converge on the menu.
Fallacy. The
Okay.
menu is very large. It's just that the problems that plague mankind tend to be narrow.
Quite. I was just saying people are defensive because they want to give a good impression and they don't realize that it is a boomerang. The main thing we have to teach our friends and relations, don't be defensive because it's self-defeating.
What about it is self-defeating?
When you try to present yourself in good light, people look at you and so on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was defensive yesterday because I've been doing a lot of stand-up, and my friend who never went to a show, he said, I cannot possibly imagine you ever being funny.
Really?
And even though I had known that I made people laugh, so I have evidence, I could not resist telling him. I could not resist defending my pride. And it was interesting because I was fully aware that this is useless.
Yes, quite. I am very impressed by the stand-up comic Dick Gregory, American, about my age. He wrote an autobiography called Nigger.
Yes.
Very nice.
It is an art. It is an interesting art. But yes, so some people would say there is a need to defend myself. If someone says you are this or you are that, I need to defend my reputation.
No, the need to defend yourself is limited to the police and to the court. When you are accused in court, it's your imperative, your duty to defend yourself as best you can.
Yeah.
Because there you have lawyers who support you and who attack you.
So what you're saying is that most times the stakes are meaningless.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you look at careers of people and you ask, A, were they successful, B, were they defensive, you'll find that only the non-defensive were successful, almost without exception. There are exceptions here and there, but very rare.
Yeah, that's true. The exceptions, I think, are not literally, but the dictators, the ones that are defensive in a very jealous way so as to accumulate, Machiavellian kind of in their defensiveness.
Certainly only Machiavelli was anything but defensive, of course.
I only read 2 pages of him when I was 16, and I thought,
I recommend you read it again. I think he's marvelous.
really?
Oh, yes.
This brings up to me a question that I had for you is, what books would you recommend to learn how to think better?
Oh, unhesitatingly, Bertrand Russell and Karl Popper.
Just anything of theirs?
Anything of this, because they repeat themselves in many ways.
Okay.
But Russell is the most proliferate and most rich in content. He really, everything he touched, he showed great expertise and said interesting things because he was a man of peace. See, there's no question that amongst popular thinkers, there are peace lovers like Russell, like Popper, like Polanyi, and there are warmongers like Heidegger. And I don't understand how is it that people enjoy reading Heidegger.
I'm being unfamiliar with Heidegger. What was the essence of his war?
He said that the main thing is that people are afraid to look at death in the eyes. They refuse to agree that they are mortal. And I think this is very stupid because we are much more worried about the death of our near and beloved than about ourselves. If you ask yourself what death you worry about, you'll find it's the death of people who you care about, not yourself. So the main idea of his is just really unimaginative. And he wrote in an obscure language. Almost everything he wrote was obscure. I know of only, and he has 160 volumes.
Wow.
And really only 1 or 2 pieces of his, which I think are written in proper German. And some of his ploys are really very silly. He never says the word human being, he invented a word for it. Big deal. I really don't think it makes much difference.
No, it's the issue with metaphors that we have
Right.
we have mentioned just now.
When he
Please
was
go on.
asked about the Holocaust, he said, in war, people die.
Wow.
He mentioned the Holocaust only once. He said that the mechanized cowshed is worse than Auschwitz.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful what people do with this concept.
Yeah.
Speaking to Germans sometimes, younger Germans, Germans who are born in the last 30 years, they will talk about the crimes of World War II or what Germany did in World War II. From politeness, I don't belabor the point, but it's the war is secondary to what, or the war is only related. It is not the thing that happened.
No question. There's no question. You are right. War is ubiquitous, and the Holocaust is a once only.
Do you think it's a once only? I feel like why?
It's because it's not genocide. Genocide is really ubiquitous, but not the Holocaust.
What is it if not genocide?
It is genocide with a certain vehemence.
Yeah.
It was not that they killed the enemies. They killed people who they had reason to think are genetically harmful. They see the very birth is objectionable.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, the Holocaust began with killing Germans, not Jews. I mean, non-Jewish Germans.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I knew in vague terms. I didn't know where it began. I knew that other people were invited to the party.
But that's the beginning. The beginning was emptying the madhouses and so on.
Wow. So I will use the Holocaust to transition into the topic of anger. And I wanted to bring up and challenge something that you said to me the last time we recorded, which is you said all anger is self-anger.
Yes.
So I would, my refutation attempt is this, like, so I'm walking in the street with a female friend who I know has been raped, has had like a history of sexual assault. And she says to me, there in the street walks my victimizer. And then I feel immediately a savage anger inside of me. How is that self-anger?
Why do you feel anger?
Because I want to kill the person.
Well, why should you want to kill him?
Because I feel an attachment to my friend and
that should make you want to bring the felon to justice. Revenge is a primitive kind of justice, like feud.
Yeah. For sure. The primitiveness of the emotions I'm displaying in this vignette are clear. It doesn't escape me.
That's the reason you are angry, because when you think of bringing people to justice, you're not angry with them.
But how is that self-anger? How is that anger at myself? That
you shouldn't be angry at them. You should try to put them to justice, not to feel anything about them. If anything, they should evoke one feeling, and that is disgust.
Yeah. Because the statement that all anger is self-anger immediately resonates with me as true, and yet it doesn't make sense to me because
I don't know if it is true. I know I learned it from Spinoza.
It resonates, yeah.
Spinoza was a man at peace with himself. What was so remarkable about Spinoza is his character, not his philosophy.
Okay.
And already in his lifetime, I don't know if you know, people came to pilgrimage to see him. Leibniz came to visit him, for example, not a small matter.
To pilgrimage, to visit the wise.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but you know, he was anathematized from the Jewish community, and he didn't resent it, didn't resist it.
A quote of his that you told me once is preaching love is self-defense.
Yes.
That's so difficult. That's so fucking difficult.
Why do you have to preach love? Dick Gregory, whom I already mentioned, disagreed with Martin Luther King. King said, love thy neighbor. And he said, I don't want them to love me, just respect will do.
And who do you agree with?
With Dick Gregory, of course. Love is something you cannot demand. Respect you can. I deserve your respect. I don't deserve your love, no matter what I do.
What is easier for me to do, to love myself or to respect myself? Because the two seem tied.
First of all, you have to respect yourself. And I think it's the nub of it. Once you realize that your self-respect is unconditioned, you'll be different. once you realize that every person deserves respect, I may qualify it and say maybe the Nazi leadership not. I'm really very bothered about what I'm now saying. I don't know if what I say is true, and I should.
Mm-hmm.
But putting aside the monsters among us, everyone deserves respect, and self-respect is included. Nachman of Breslau said, love thy neighbor like thyself means first learn to love yourself, and then you can love your neighbor. That's Nachman.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
Yeah, there is we've circled around some issues of love, respect, anger. It all gets to be a big kind of jumble.
It is a jumble, and I think you are right to try to sort it out. I salute you. I think you're doing very nicely.
It's just an interesting endeavor, because people go around seeking advice often, as complicated.
I give you advice.
Yes.
Now, right now.
Please.
When I said I salute you, you should have responded.
Thank you.
That's right. You're welcome. Forgive my gauche response, but I thought this merits mention.
Perhaps I was humbled.
There's no perhaps about it. You're quite right, and I'm in the wrong, but I thought I should have mentioned it anyway.
Right and wrong. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Right and wrong are tricky as well. Everything is tricky. I try to explain to, this is, when people are talking to me, because I live abroad and people want to talk about Israel all the time, I try to explain to them that when you are talking.
You see, you rub them the wrong way, and you find their attack on you bothersome.
Sometimes, yes. Yeah.
That's enough. That's enough. Once you realize that they attack you because they are ambivalent, namely they envy you, then it will be impossible for you, just impossible for you to feel hostile in any manner.
That is interesting. I thought of it in a completely different stream, but that's an interesting component to it. I was thinking about cognitive therapy, thought reframing therapy. Are you familiar? Thought reframing therapy. Are you familiar with?
Yes, of course.
This is when, for example, my client will tell me, I am a horrible person because I forgot to prepare breakfast for my child the night before. And I will say, this is an opportunity to practice reframing that thought. You know, I acknowledge that I'm disappointed with myself because of doing that, but I recognize that I have been sacrificing a lot of myself for my child and have been generally doing a great job, and so on.
Let me mention a ploy that I learned from Karl Popper, which I think is just marvelous. He often would say to his interlocutor, can you imagine a situation that would make you change your mind? For example, if you think that all swans are white, you can easily imagine a situation that will make you change your mind, right?
Yeah.
Nothing easier than that.
For sure.
By the way, I don't know if you know, there are black swans and black-necked swans, there are all sorts of swans. Once you raise in people this question, for example, Popper said the Marxists cannot read a newspaper without finding them ample confirmation of Marx.
Yeah, this is.
And he would ask them, what would make you change? I remember, like today, I was a Marxist. And I gave up my Marxism when I realized that I can easily shake off all criticism of my Marxism.
Yeah, that's
That then speaks of you, of me, not of Marxism.
that is the warm blanket of ideology. It's perfect.
Yes, yes.
It's so
What you have to learn about the warm blanket is that you don't need it.
why? But it's so comfortable. I'm uncomfortable
No,
with
no, no. The comfort of it is that you permit yourself to accept it. Why not accept it? Permit yourself to accept anything that speaks to you, whether about you or about anything. Remember that when Pythagoras learned something new, he made a sacrifice in gratitude.
I don't have to remember. I never knew that, but it's that's
It's a
interesting.
story that he sacrificed 100 oxen every time he learned something new, which is of course nonsense, but I'm telling you the story.
Except when he learned about rational numbers, he didn't like that.
It's not clear. The person who discovered it either committed suicide or pushed towards suicide, but that was long after he died.
Long after Pythagoras died?
Yeah, he didn't know about the square root of 2.
Okay, okay. I had
Which is a refutation of his idea, yes.
I had thought that the way I heard it told is Pythagoras had someone murdered because they invented.
No, you got it wrong. It's clear that the person who had the story, by the way, the story was a secret of the caste. You know, they were in government of Sicily.
Mhm.
So there was a political need to conceal the refutation.
Wow,
This
the
is
mathematical
the word
refutation.
irrational numbers. The word irrational is a mistranslation of alogos, which is unmentionable.
Oh, wow.
Unsayable. I don't know if you know how they say in Yiddish sex organs.
No.
Asur ledaber lach.
Wow. Which means forbidden to talk in Hebrew.
Maimonides said, Hebrew is a holy language because it has no name for genitals.
That's there's
That's in Maimonides.
the mevoshim, embarrassment.
Mevushim, yes. Mevushim is not a name.
Yeah, it's
Mevushim means something to be ashamed of.
yeah. Very interesting.
Indeed, in modern Hebrew, the name for genitals is new.
It's
Both male and
metaphor.
female.
I don't know where the name for vagina comes from. Actually, what is the proper human Hebrew name? I don't know.
The word in Hebrew for vagina is Arabic,
Okay,
and the word
right.
for penis in Hebrew comes from Yiddish. In Yiddish, it's called tail, which is schwanz, and in Hebrew it is zanav, and that became zayin.
I thought it became Zayin because Zayin means, I thought Zayin in the Bible is a sword.
It's weapon, not sword.
Okay. Well, still.
Yes, until now we speak of the armed soldier as Chayal Mezuyan. Yes?
Yeah, exactly. I think I thought that's where it came from.
As far as I know, I may be mistaken, of course, but the version I learned is what I told you.
Okay.
Not that this all matters very much because it's a matter for theoreticians of language. It's not very important.
Yeah, and in the day where, just as we today manage to say what we need to say with the words that we have, I'm sure
Right.
they did the same back then.
You're absolutely right, yes.
The last thing I just had, because the way I'm writing this, right, is like we talk about stuff and we ping pong in many different directions. And then I see a stream of dialogue to which I want to make sure that I cover a corner, you know? And then I edit it, and then I will edit it back to make it look like a cohesive dialogue.
That's very standard. And when you find lacunae, you can raise the question and then fill the lacunae.
And then what, the lacuna?
Fill the lacunae. You know, close holes.
Oh, okay, okay. Yes,
You
so
come again and say, last week we discussed something and I forgot to ask you question so and so.
exactly.
And
And
that's filling the lacuna.
okay, for a second I thought you were referring to Lacan,
Oh, no, nothing to do with Lacan.
good.
Lacuna is Latin and Lacan is French.
Okay. The statement, all depression is anxiety, is one that you produced, which I would like to challenge, unless you've refuted yourself.
I have to qualify it to a certain extent. I'm depressive.
Yeah,
That is to say, I tend to fall into depression at the slightest provocation.
yeah.
But the provocation is what I talked about.
The anxiety, okay, the sensitivity to the provocation.
That's right.
Oh,
Now you got it.
very interesting. I understand. The reason it was important for me to challenge it is because of the mechanical aspect of depression, which you can see most clearly in people with what is called dysthymia. People who are, the classic example, I don't know if you have read the Pooh Bear, I don't know what it's called in English, Pooh the Bear and his cast of characters. They have a morose donkey.
It's Winnie the Pooh, by the way.
Winnie the Pooh. I don't know how I forgot it, but yes.
Doesn't matter. I don't know if you know what's Winnie.
Winnie is the sound a horse make, no?
No,
What?
it's Winnipeg, part of Canada.
Okay. Is that where they are from?
That's where it's from. That we have from the horse's mouth, yes.
Okay. Yes, so there's a donkey that is depressive. Everything is EO. And there's people who are EO and they don't seem to have a lot of anxiety. They just know everything will be awful.
Yes, as I told you, I think there are people who are more prone to depression than others, but there's always a need for a trigger.
Yeah, there is.
That's all I said, yes. If I said something else and it was misspelling or mistaken or whatever it is.
No, and I'm only using, I'm using the things you said as jumping boards for thoughts that I don't have completely sorted out.
What is important is that the best cure for depression is self-worth.
I thought it was behavioral activation.
It's behavior that brings you self-worth. In Jewish tradition, for example, it is charity.
Yeah. In psychology, sometimes I wonder what you will think of it. If you talk to a depressive person, you say, and they're unable to get out of bed an entire day, you say, go boil a pot of water. Just get that.
Different people say different things. First of all, what you want to do to depressive people is to make them aware of their achievements. I knew a psychiatrist of Hollywood whose patients were people whose success was beyond imagination. And they all disassociated themselves from their success. They said, it's not me.
I wonder a lot because so many celebrities are so visibly disturbed, and it is so strange.
No, it's not strange at all. They are afraid to lose their charm. See, most of us, if we have any charm, we don't know what it is and where it comes from.
Yeah. To me, the issue of self-worth is really interesting because it is tied to a very tricky concept of valuation,
Yes, of valuation. That's what we are talking about.
And valuation rears its ugly head in so many ways and creates.
I can tell you how I overcame this problem.
Yes, please.
I'm someone else. Whenever I have an interesting activity and I don't know how to judge it, I go over it in my mind as someone else.
When you go over it, you think you're someone else and you're going over what someone else said.
Very simple.
Interesting. I wonder if the idea of good and bad is inherently destructive. Because if I'm worthy, if I have self-worth, that means that I needed to consider it, and I could have come up with the consideration that I don't have self-worth for whatever value reasons.
It's interesting that children learn about good and evil before they notice that they have a self. It's very important. And then while developing an idea of the self, we have to reconsider what we consider good and bad and apply it to ourselves. For example, when I'm quarrelous and I develop a sense of ethics, I look at myself and say, well, I quarrel too much. Could I reduce the amount of quarrel? That is very important. And this is growing up. See, the funny thing is that children are naive. They accept everything. They believe in Santa Claus. And when they grow up, they start questioning Santa Claus and they become cynical. And only afterwards, when they outgrow both naivete and cynicism, which are the two poles, then you can talk, but not before.
Yeah.
You have to outgrow both naivete and cynicism before we can discuss ethics. I don't know if you met people who stuck to cynicism.
Yes, it was ethics.
You can't talk with them.
Yeah.
Whatever you say to them, they approach cynically.
I find that is most people, at least we're not talking about what they agree with already.
Then people who remain cynical are teenagers, frozen teenagers.
Yeah, it's hard. It's another one of those comforting blankets, cynicism.
It is comforting, but you will be bored by them. So it is a boomerang.
And what is cynicism? What is cynicism?
Oh, you know well.
I know well, but I can never say it.
Oh no! Look, you really are impressed by this generosity of this and so on.
Okay.
Come off it.
Huh?
Come off it. You know better.
Yeah.
Yourself, really.
Yeah.
This is cynicism at its worst, and it looks so sane, so adult, so respectable.
Yeah.
It's nothing of that. Yeah.
Someone once said to me, oh, never mind why, they said, you're better than this. And I said, evidence proves to the contrary.
These things are very fluid.
Yeah.
The need to judge oneself is anxiety.
Yes.
And the question is, how can you overcome anxiety? That is the real question, especially for the mentally ill. And
part of the answer, of course, is you must overcome it in a way that is not a direct challenge.
Oh, of course, because the challenge is a part of the stuff. With all these mental tricks, they are able to convert criticism into corroboration.
Yeah. I read something in a book yesterday which reminded me of other things you said, but it was a novel and a character said, I'm going home across the sea tomorrow. I'm not telling you that I must do it. I am telling you I will do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very interesting thing, because to say I must is to practice not doing it, in a sense.
Oh, you say I must in order to block criticism. It's a fait accompli, you can't change it.
Wow. Yeah, fait accompli. It's a fact, it's a fact.
Yeah, consider me gone. Don't try to dissuade me from going, consider me gone.
Oh, you mean the saying will?
Speaker, yes.
Yes. That's such a, whether it's with anything, like if you fear the doctor, like going to the doctor, it's the difference between I have to go to the doctor, I know this, well, that sounds like you're not going to the doctor.
That's right, yeah. That's right.
It's interesting the challenge. We can understand so much, and yet being a person who suffers less, or who is less self-evaluative, like we're talking with anxiety, it's very difficult.
The only way to overcome this, if there is any, is to show the mechanism. You get into panic.
To what the mechanism? To show?
The mechanism which makes you stay where you are.
To observe it, you mean?
To know that when you overcame all the difficulties on the way to improvement, comes panic to stop you from improving yourself. Yes.
Yes.
And you have to realize that panic is a defense mechanism that means nothing. You have to learn how to overcome it, not to argue with it.
You have to learn to live through it.
Yeah. See, all wartime novels have as one of its heroes a tyro, a young newcomer who shits in his pants and whose peers say to him, don't worry, we all shit in our pants. Don't worry, it's nothing.
Yeah, for sure. Completely. It's so funny because so many things are nothing, but they're so big for us.
Because we are told that if you are a man, oh, it's terrible, right? It gets stuck in my throat. It's so disgusting, so misanthropic.
Yeah, it is, and it's yeah, if you're a man, or it's very, there's so many values that we throw on each other and on ourselves.
You remember at the time of the student revolt, they spoke of dissenters as people whose balls are dried. That's why when really the students' movement was challenged, very little of it remained.
Which student movement is that?
1969.
Oh, that one. Okay. Yeah, they did a marvelous job. I have to say, HIV also helped a lot. It was very, very effective in dealing with that problem anyway. Yeah, I was thinking, the thing about anxiety is like and depression, there's the valuation component, and then there's the future looking component, like the looking forward.
I think it's the same. I think it's the same. If you have no future, you can't value yourself, because it's your duty to take care of yourself and of your people. If you are the man of the family, you have to take care of your wife and children. But anyway, you have to take care of yourself.
So would we recommend, so that reminds me of the Buddhists and saying that you have no
Oh,
future.
yes, yes, you're quite right. I say to all my students, if you can avoid work, don't work.
Yeah, it's better.
Oh, yes, no question about it. If your parents can support you, get them to support you.
Yeah, for sure.
And the point is so strange because in the modern world, nobody has to work.
Yes, it's very strange.
It's not true in poor countries. I've been in poor countries and I've seen people can starve. But in a modern country, people cannot starve. Some people do starve in modern countries, but they are addicts and so on.
They are addicts, or they have circumstances. They could have avoided starving if they had some more.
You have to know that some homeless refuse homes.
Yes, for sure.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yeah, it's very interesting that not even but we could easily construct a society. All it would need is maybe the 100 or 1,000 most influential people in the world to want to make it so that we restructure society, that who wants to work works and who doesn't. Sorry.
That's right, but the work ethic is a great enemy.
The what?
The work ethic.
Yes, it's
if you are a man.
I went into graduate school thumping my chest and telling potential professors that I had great work ethic, and everyone was very happy to hear. And I punished myself so long, and I never really learned how to flow well in my work because I was busy forcing it.
All these things should be past, long dead, past.
But they are glorified today. It's horrible.
But you have to be clean.
Yeah.
You have to approach it like faith in Santa Claus. Some of your friends believe in Santa Claus. What can you do?
Yeah, some people believe in Santa Claus and you just have to let them. That's beautiful. That's the Santa Claus model for other people's ignorance.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, this has been another wonderful writing session. Okay, siyam titak